be the first speaker here at TEDxPhilly, our premier event. And I am a nerd. I grew up here, went to Central High School, and I like to warm up. I feel like as the first speaker, we should warm up. So I'm going to do what all nerds do and warm up with trivia. Presidential trivia. So I'm going to ask you 3 questions. Shout out if you know the answer, if you think you know the answer. There is no wrong answers, except wrong answers, but that's fine. It's TED. We're allowed to do that. So the first question is, which U.S. president was the first president born in a hospital? Shout out. Who? Yes, you. Wow, this will make my time. Who? Who? Nixon? No, he was very poor, born in a farm. Yes. Carter, that is correct. Jimmy Carter, first president born in a hospital, which is pretty amazing if you think about it. All right, next one. Which president had the most children, most biological children? Jackson? That is very good. He adopted 10 children, Jackson, but he is not the top one. Tyler, that is right. Tyler had 15 kids. Over 2 wives. I thank you, the pill. So, my last question is the easiest one, and whoever gets it right will launch the poem that will begin my speech. It is one of my favorite presidents of all time, one of our most badass presidents, and definitely our most fat-assed president. And who is our heaviest president? Taft. Everybody remembers Taft as our fattest president. The teacher telling us the story of how he once got stuck in his own bathtub. How it took 4 grown men to dislodge him, and we would gape at the comedy of it. Taft holding his fat arms out for pulling. 1, 2, 3, and nothing. 3 men wiping their sweaty brows going, "We need another man." Poor, naked Taft, President of the United States, and stuck in his cold marble tub. How long did he sit there cold and silent, realizing he needed help? Freed, how long did he stand naked in front of the men to thank them? Or did he just dash off, modest towel fluttering behind him like a white flag? Don't think he didn't know. In college, his nickname was Big Lub. He once sent a telegram to the Secretary of War, which read, "Went on a horse ride, feeling good," to which the Secretary responded, "How's the horse feeling?" Even during his presidential election, his opponent passed out pins which read, "Nobody likes a fat boy." That is some cold shit, 1904. He was 6 foot, 340 pounds. He knew. But Taft could give a damn. He was ballsy. Ballsy enough to build the White House a new bathtub. A huge bathtub. Big enough for 6 men or 1 president. Ballsy enough to let Wooly Mooly the cow graze brazenly on the White House lawn just so he could gulp all the fresh milk he wanted. Ballsy enough that when a New York State senator named Chauncey Depew put his skinny hands on Taft's wide belly and asked, "So what are you going to call it when it comes, Mr. President?" Taft just answered, "Well, if it's a boy, I'll call it William. And if it's a girl, I'll call it Theodora. But if it turns out just to be a fart, I'll call it Chauncey." Thank you. All true. And this is sort of the subject of my talk today. Not Taft, although I could talk about him forever. But how you can turn sort of nerdy obsessions into the things that could transform your life. Give you a little background on myself. I was born here in Philadelphia, the product of 2 government workers. My mom, who's in the audience and waving to me this whole time, thank you, Mom, is an IRS worker. My dad worked for the Philadelphia Water Department. So if you are a person my age or had a child my age who inexplicably went to a wastewater treatment facility as a class trip, my apologies, that was probably my fault. I lived in a working class neighborhood. Everyone who lived in my neighborhood was construction workers or cops or nurses, and I always loved reading, and I always loved writing. But actually being a writer seemed about as realistic to me as being a princess. I mean, I knew it could happen, but it didn't happen to anyone I knew. So I moved to New York when I was 17, pretty much only because I knew that's what writers did. They moved to New York. And I soon realized I could not afford to live in New York. So at 17, I began working in a cubicle, my first cubicle, in a long string of cubicles. And make no mistake, office jobs are awesome. I'm not joking. They give you lots of cool things like air conditioning and free printing and paychecks and health insurance and coffee and sometimes cute visits from the IT guys. And a bunch of my friends were poets, and they were making their living as poets, touring and giving workshops and lectures, but I had spent 4 years eating only ramen noodles in order to pay for college, so I was eager to get off the poverty circuit. So when they hit the road, I went to work. And again, that's fine. Whenever I speak to young people who are interested in being artists, I remind them that day jobs are not the enemy. They give you an opportunity to let your art be what it wants to be without worrying about making money off of it. The only thing is you are the ones who have to remember that you're an artist. You have to do the work on the side. And I did. And I wrote 5 books of nerdy, weird poetry and a nonfiction book about the history of the American Poetry Slam movement. And I wrote poems on cocktail napkins and in journals and at my job, yes. And years passed. And soon I realized that I had spent 8 years in the same cubicle, the exact same cubicle. And I think everyone reaches a point in their life when they realize, is this it? Have I set the pattern in which my entire life is going to be led? I mean, I was proving that I could be a writer with a day job, but is this really all there would be? And everyone has a turning point, and my turning point happened at my office holiday party. And I wrote a poem about it, which I won't read in its entirety, but I will read the very effective last stanza. Quote, "Everyone wore their special holiday party outfits. It wasn't until I arrived at the bar that I realized my special holiday party outfit, black Oxford, black pants, black shoes, just happened to be the exact same outfits worn by the restaurant's busboys. While waiting in line for the bathroom, another patron asked if I was there to clean it." Thank you, thank you. Yes, so yes, feel free to groan. That was awful. But I will tell you, I did tell her I was a busboy to get in earlier because I really had to pee. So haha, beautiful person. I did it. But still, it was a moment that I realized that I was almost an imposter at my own office holiday party. It made me feel like maybe I was an imposter in my own life. Because despite all the books that I'd written and the tours that I had done, I was, in fact, 30 years old, living in the same apartment I moved into when I graduated, working in that same cubicle, and being mistaken for a busboy at a fancy restaurant. This was not the person that I thought I was, and it definitely wasn't the person that I wanted to be. During my 8-year term in that cubicle, I learned a lot. I learned to create pieces that I loved. I learned to chase what interested me, and I learned how to budget my time, budget my money, budget my creative energy. So when was it that I was ever going to feel like I could leave, to really just be a writer? And I wish I could say I had a Norma Rae moment, that I stood on my office chair with a big sign that said, "Poetry!" But I didn't. I'm a working class girl, so I handled it like we do. I thought of being a writer as a job, one that I had to apply for. So step 1 was finding a project that I loved, that I would give up anything to work on, and that was easy enough. I'm sure if you've ever left Philadelphia, people go, "Philadelphia," and they want to talk to you about the things that they know, like soft pretzels, which are delicious, and cheesesteaks. Jim's is the best, and the Liberty Bell, it's got that crack in it. But there's one thing that you can never really explain to anyone, and that is the Mutter Museum. Why? A museum full of medical oddities. Why is that where you went on every class trip from 4th to 8th grade? And people in New York would be like, What is with the soap lady and the 40-pound colon and me, this the wall of eye trauma? And they'd say, why does it exist? Who created it? And that, I did not know. So the summer before my senior year, I asked Gretchen Warden, the late director of the Mooner Museum, if I could come in and just look around and see if I could dig up a story. And I soon discovered that Thomas Dent Mooner, who founded the Mooner Museum, was among many things. He was a genius. He was a rabble-rouser. He was super good-looking. He was a professor. He was an activist. He was a lecturer so popular they had to rope off his speaking areas. He worked during an amazing time in American medical history where they were still debating things like bloodletting and whether or not you should wash your hands before surgery. But also we're discovering amazing things like anesthesia. And Mooner was the first person in Philadelphia ever to use anesthesia in surgery. He died tragically young, as a lot of beautiful people do. And he left behind 1,300 unusual pathological specimens, which would become the basis of his namesake museum. The research would become the thesis, my senior thesis at NYU, and I always wanted to return to it, make a whole book out of it. But you see, the research would have to be in Philadelphia. And, I had this job back in New York. So after I figured out step one, the project I wanted to work on, step two was getting the opportunity to work on it. The internet, it turns out, is awesome as well, and filled with many websites to help you transform your life. And I began scouring websites to help artists get funding, or residencies, or fellowships. I told the Mooner Museum my intentions, and they fully supported me. And I applied for everything, every damn thing, and then I got rejected from everything! Every damn thing for a year straight. And on one side, it was depressing. And on the other side, it was still depressing. But there's a Philadelphian you may know named Ben Franklin. And he said that energy and persistence will conquer all. So I soldiered on. And in this past June, I found out that I was awarded the Writer-in-Residence position at the University of Pennsylvania. I found out at my job. I found out in my cubicle. And I had to remind myself that I was at work, that I couldn't make a sound. It took me about a week to finally tell my job, and when I did, I burst into tears. It is scary sometimes to leave everything you've ever known. People talk a lot about the chances they would take if they could do something risky, the thing they really love, and from the other side of it, I can tell you, it is scary, but thrilling and necessary. The life I've constructed for myself right now, you should know, is not so different than the life I lived in New York. I still wake up with an alarm clock. I still commute to the many archival libraries which have gratefully opened their doors to me. I still talk to the people who work there about their weekends. The paycheck is dramatically different. Mostly performance fees and book sales, and I am more likely to transcribe a page about facial tumors than I am to fax anything, but I'm still me, which is a relief. And you will still be you if you choose to break your pattern and try to set yourself up in that way to succeed. And this doesn't mean that you won't have moments of panic. Mine came several weeks into the project. I had spent a week and a half touring super hard, and I did not want to miss my early morning appointment at the Thomas Jefferson Archival Library. I was exhausted. I was wearing my boyfriend's clothes because all of my clothes smelled, and I was surrounded by books filled with 1850s medical horror stories. And I thought, what have I done? Why did anyone think I could do this? Wasn't it so much simpler to just have an office job? And it was then that Thomas Dent Mooner, that genius, that cad, he spoke to me through 150 years of history. He wrote a speech in 1847, which I just happened to be transcribing in 2010, and in it he said, "The world is no place of rest. I repeat, it is not a place of rest, but for effort. Steady, continuous, undeviating effort. Our work should never be done. And it is the daydream of ignorance to look forward to that as a happy time, when we shall wish for nothing more and have nothing more to accomplish." He wrote to place no dependence on your own genius, even if you possess it, And if you have great talents, industry will improve them. And if you have moderate talents, industry will supply their deficiency. Nothing is denied to well-directed labor, he wrote, and nothing is obtained without it. And he was right. If I have anything to say to this audience today, it's to be bold, to love what you love, to chase your biggest and most ambitious dream, to know that the future is waiting for you. You can take your time to get there, but just make sure that you meet it. And when you know, you will know in your bones that it is time to take that risk. And from the other side, just remember what Mutter said, that you don't have to be the genius you think you need to be. You just have to be present, to show up, and to work hard. But step one, if you're in your office job, is to just open yourself up to your own potential, to make room in your life for that opportunity. And the last quote I'm going to read today, is one that I always had over my computer, and it helped center me when sometimes I wondered where the heck I was going. It's by a poet and a songwriter you guys probably know, Leonard Cohen. And in it he wrote, "Once your life is organized so beautifully that there is a table and a chair and a typewriter, that in itself is already a triumph." Thank you.